Good morning. I'd like to welcome you to the BlackUSA.News Morning Show. My name is Donnie Glover, and today we have with us Sharon Black. Uh, Sharon has been a candidate for president of the Baltimore City Council before. She's also, now you run the People's Campaign?
I'm one of the organizers with the People's Power Assembly, and also right now the newly formed Unemployed Workers Union.
Okay, now over the years, you've worked on the $15 minimum wage. You've worked on jobs, not jails, on ending racism and police terror, housing fit for human beings, relevant education for all. You've worked on ensuring that heat, water, and light are human rights, good health for all people, making Baltimore free of all forms of racism and bigotry, taxing the rich and not the poor, and building the people's power through the people's assemblies. You've been quite busy.
Yes, sir. And I know that, Mr. Glover, you have been too.
Oh. Well, here's the beauty of you. You're all the way from Wilmington.
You're right. You're right. That's true. I was born and raised in Wilmington, Delaware.
Is now the time to be hightailing it back to Delaware, considering the president is from there?
No, because I love Baltimore. I raised my son here. He was just a little baby, a little toddler when he came here. And now we're Baltimoreans, or Baltimoreans, whatever you want to call us. But, we've been here so long that I haven't been back in decades, actually.
Really? Here's your boy, Bill Gooden.
Yep. Bill Gooden is an activist too, been in the street on all these activities that you talked about.
And Rico's giving you love. Good morning, Rico.
Good morning, Rico.
First and foremost, top fan. Okay, so lately you've been busting Larry Hogan upside the
head. Yeah. I mean, we intend to bust him upside the head until he does right. And that's on the issue of his literally giving back federal money that belongs to the people in the state of Maryland. That is, he's halting the federal benefits on the pandemic unemployment early. And the Labor Department already had said a couple weeks ago that wasn't going to happen here in the state of Maryland. And yet he turned around in a short period without any notice, just out of the blue, through an email, announced that they were going to put a halt to that. And that's literally a lifeline for many people, both in our city and around the state. So we're doing everything in our power, really, to protest his recent move. And, we believe we can win. We actually believe we can win on this. I mean, the truth of the matter is that there are thousands of people who still haven't even received the benefits that were due to them since the beginning of the pandemic. And I'm not just talking about pandemic insurance, but also even the regular unemployment. So there's a lot to be said about it, and a lot of controversy around it. And that's why we formed a union, really, to protect the unemployed who really need that kind of protection.
So in a recent edition of the Baltimore Sun, it says that Maryland lawmakers asked whether they can undo Hogan's decision to cut off unemployment benefits. The Washington Post reported 2 days ago Hogan to end enhanced federal unemployment benefits in Maryland, and also Channel 11, WTOP, NBC, Washington, CBS, Baltimore. What I'm trying to understand is his reasoning. Have we gotten into his reasoning? Let me just share this quote. You plan for September, and then it's like, oh, you're about to lose 2 entire months, especially if you're still waiting on money for unemployment. You've never been able to catch up. It's pretty upsetting. And this is from Mallory Thompson. Thompson has a young daughter, and she said it's harder for her to get a job
They were put on hold
because of all of this pandemic stuff. So what do you think his reasoning is?
You know, your guess is as good as mine, Mr. Glover. I really actually, a little clueless. I mean, some people could guess that he's falling in line with the other Republican governors across the country who've turned the money in and he's grandstanding to them. Whatever the reasoning behind it, it's reprehensible because, you know, no notice whatsoever. And we think this whole narrative that people don't want to work is a false narrative. And we could go into the facts on that, why we believe that and know that it's true. But there's so much that the state can do. There's been no preparation really for job training, no preparation for job placement. You know, is the state examining a public works program? If they're really worried about labor, what about the ma and pa businesses? We worry about them too. The governor could actually give them, you know, money to actually incentivize them to pay workers more, especially in Baltimore City and PG County, because one of the reasons why we are like fighting this so hard, and you mentioned the Black Lives Matter movement over the summer that people fought in, it was probably one of the largest demonstrations worldwide. You know, Baltimore's unemployment rate in the PG County are, well, they're more than 2%, but by their statistics, 8% in PG County and 7.6% in Baltimore City. And then the state average is 6.2. And it varies from county to county and area to area. But obviously, it's very clear that the Black and brown communities, both in PG County and Baltimore City, are the counties that are suffering the most. Last night, we had an unemployed workers clinic where we have a pro bono lawyer who takes people's grievances and appeals. And one of the women came in, you know, and a lot of the people filing grievances are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. And she has training in taking care of patients. And, you know, I don't know her exact age, but she lost her patient. The patient died. She's now in foreclosure. She's in Baltimore City. She's now, you know, actually her car was repossessed twice. She has no income whatsoever because they haven't even gotten around to paying her pandemic or her regular unemployment money. And even her employer has come to go on the bat for her. And she's just one example, but that's what we have is a lot of people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who aren't going to be able to, if they're trying to get people to take a job as a, I'm just giving an example, construction worker or somebody out there doing yard work. These are not folks who can do that. I mean, you couldn't put me to work mowing lawns right now. So there really needs to be real job placement and real discussion of these issues. I mean, we think ultimately, I don't know if this is Governor Hogan's behind, you know, his motivation, but we think as far as a system motivation, it's to provide a very large, desperate number of unemployed people who will work for nothing, which is going to lower wages for everybody. And they're trying to pit people against each other and say, hey, you know, people are lazy. They'd rather collect pandemic money. No, if people could talk to people that are suffering, they would know that that's completely erroneous. But, you know, it's going to take a fight. Mr. Glover, I think we can win.
Have you talked to the governor?
Well, the governor hasn't talked to us. We have sent, what we're doing right now is sending grievances one by one, receipt requested, you know, signature requested to both the governor and the Department of Labor. I have to tell you very honestly, both the state and even the city administration are really, really difficult to reach. And it's not just the unemployed that are saying that, even activist groups. You could talk to, for instance, Doc Cheatham in the West Side. When we were protesting vaccine apartheid, we must have sent out emails to everybody, including the governor and, of course, all the city officials and the health department. And nobody bothered to get back to us. I mean, finally, we embarrassed them so badly, they still didn't get back to us. But, you know, they made some motion. And, of course, the governor then had this equity thing that he formed that was supposed to deal with the problem of the unequal distributions of vaccines. And I'm not taking a position whether you get one or you don't get one. The point is it should be accessible to everybody. But at any rate, so
you don't think the vaccines were offered to Black and brown people in the same way it was offered to others?
No. And I'll tell you what I witnessed with my own eyes and what I experienced. I live in East Baltimore. And sometimes I think zip codes, regardless of your nationality, that's how they work. It wasn't until they finally forced the issue that 21218, because of its level of poverty, was going to be given a little more priority in the list, that we were able to be vaccinated. Reverend Chambers, who's 80, when we held that press conference, and Doc Cheatham and myself and Leon Purnell, and I forget who else was there, but if I'm missing somebody, all of us are seniors, and none of us were able to get their vaccines, and we had been trying and trying and trying and trying, and every time.
As of what date, Sharon?
Oh, that was sort of in the beginning when we all qualified. Now it's easy, but at the time it wasn't. And I would go into Giants on 33rd Street, and my son would go in there with me. And every time we looked at, who was waiting in line or sitting in the chairs, it was all white people. And the neighborhood here, that's not the composition of the neighborhood. Probably about 60 to 70% Black in this particular neighborhood and the surrounding area. And, they're just, for instance, Reverend Chambers, when we held that press conference at Douglas Homes, there were 3 people within that court who had died from COVID. And Reverend Chambers was trying and trying to get her vaccine and had been contacting Hopkins, couldn't get it. Of course, after the press conference, we all got calls. But, there still hasn't been a truck, which we had demanded that they send a mobile unit to the housing projects. And Douglas Homes, Latrobe, I don't know about Latrobe. I think we've now seen a truck, but, at the time, it wasn't happening. So it took, people out there protesting to change that. And as you well probably know, Doc Cheatham, as much as anybody, really did a whole lot to try to push that on the west side, and was able to get, some movement on the part of the city and state. But at this point, the bigger issue right now is
I remember a time when the governor and lieutenant governor did a lot for Doc Cheatham over there.
Yeah.
In his neighborhood, and then all of a sudden, we saw Doc go his separate way after the state had come down to McKean Avenue and put the Project Core there. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I don't either.
But Doc Cheatham all of a sudden was the same people that came and helped him. He was bashing upside the head.
Yeah, that's true. That was my sort of, what do you call it, observation. But a lot of times I'm just observing things. Just like we could get into the whole discussion on Molesby also, but, and
we can touch that.
Yeah, the way they dealt with that is just amazing.
Are you close with Bill Gooden?
I sure am.
Well, I'm going to put the link in. When we have guests that write as much as Bill Gooden do, I like to just send them the link, because he's writing a book over here in the comments section. Okay, so let me get to this. Where were the Democrats in this process? Now, Baltimore's 9-1 Democrat. Republicans have very little, if any, influence here in the city of Baltimore, at least on the surface. Where were our Democrats in getting the vaccine to the people?
Well, that's a big question. I thought maybe I know a lot more in terms of what they've done around the unemployment situation more recently. I think it's probably a mixed thing. It's a mixed bag.
You got Johns Hopkins on the east side, University of Maryland on the west side, in a 9-1 Democratic city. Did we really have to go to the governor to get to, say, the president of Hopkins, the president of the University of Maryland, say, hey, you're in the Black community.
Yeah.
Want some shots?
Right. Well, it's a problem, and it was even a problem. I mean, here's as an activist perspective on the whole question when it came down. Hogan I'm just going to say it, Hogan's a racist, and he hates Baltimore. He hates Baltimore for, basically, he's racist, but also the whole Freddie Grace protests and rebellion, has been foremost in his mind. So, that's just there. And so he dissed the mayor in Baltimore City.
Which one? Stephanie
more
Rawlings.
no, the more recent one, Brandon
Okay,
Scott.
Kathy
And
Duke.
here's the thing, but so as activists, we don't want to play into the governor's, thing. But I can contend to you that the present administration, I'm not going to mince words, hasn't done enough for the city. And we could get back into the elections part when these folks were elected, but you sort of have a semi-colonial situation, I believe, in Baltimore City, where people are in office, but how much they can or want to do is another question. But as an activist, whoever wants to play into the hands of some racist narrative that Hogan is manufacturing either. So we put a lot of our emphasis first on the state. And then depending on, how you want to go at it, I know that some of the people on the West Side were really upset about how the city handled it or didn't handle it. But, there's a whole lot to be said about that. I mean, there's such a complicated thing. I'm like, even in the case of the Mosbys, it's very hard for a lot of activists can't seem to walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. It's very clear that the attacks on her, and I speak more about her because I know her better, are based on racism. And you look at...
I will agree wholeheartedly with that.
But, but that doesn't mean necessarily me personally. I agree with her in terms of not reenacting the case on the West case, on Tyrone West. So, you can have a disagreement
I understand
with her, and yet at the same time, if you can think out of the box and really see what the whole picture is about, then you have to be opposed to the racism that's being promoted, especially from the Brew. And I wanted to send something to one of these groups I was in, and I just don't always have the time. But there was this, the Sun Papers did a whole spread on all the property that Hogan has. And he just bought this big mansion almost. I mean, a mansion. I'm not talking about 2 small homes in Florida. Not a word from the Brew. Not a word from any of the news media. Nobody builds it big up, like, okay, here's this white guy. It's okay for him to buy homes and be wealthy and rich and frankly, probably corrupt, but they don't want to expose it. And yet, if somebody is Black and they do the same thing, less than that, it's a crime. And I'm speaking as a working class person who owns or is buying a small row house in East Baltimore that's worth less than $100,000. So, my perspective is, all over the place on one level, but I don't see why the movement can't, as I said, chew bubblegum and walk at the same time, and understand the bigger picture on this. There'll be time, defend, here's what I think, defend Mosby and then go ahead and picket her if she's not doing the right thing. So, and there's bigger fish to fry too.
Couldn't we also say that the Democratic Party is racist?
Yes, I think that's absolutely true.
I mean, there's never been a Black governor. There's never been a Black U.S. senator.
Yep.
There hasn't been a Black comptroller.
Yeah.
The Democrats are no different.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. But, sometimes you have a big wolf ready to chew you up, and then you have another wolf behind the other door. Maybe you can fight both.
Well, the thing is, now I get it. You say Hogan is a racist. But I can tell you that under the Republicans, for one, Coppin State got money that it had never gotten before.
Mm-hmm.
Ever.
Well, I would contend that the difference isn't so much the parties as it is, how much the people's movement or people in general are fighting around these issues and what they're doing. And sometimes the irony is people will fight harder against a Republican than they will a Democrat. That's one part of it.
That's true. And therein is the problem, because Baltimore is 9-1 Democrat. There's no Republicans in Baltimore. When I look at East Baltimore and West Baltimore, where the murders happen,
Mm-hmm.
the Fox covers so proficiently every day, these are the same neighborhoods that the Baltimore City School Board has closed schools.
Right.
Now, the last I checked, Baltimore City is 9-1 Democrat. but they're closing schools in my neighborhood.
Mhm.
We had 3 elementary schools when Freddie Gray happened. Now we're down to 1. And this is a Democratic decision.
Right.
I find that to be racist
Well,
because
you're right.
they'll say that we have $1 billion in new school construction money. Well, what does that matter to me when you're closing schools in my neighborhood? And these are black people. So I think you got some black white supremacists out here involved in all of this mess also.
Well, I mean, I agree with you. I don't see a difference in terms of a lot of policies, and it's really about what people do. And, you know, I was going to give the example, and it's a Democrat, but Lyndon Baines Johnson, which everybody knew during that period. I don't think you're as old as I am, but I do remember him very well, was forced to pass the voting legislature and a lot of other things that were passed during that time. That was the struggle that was in the streets that forced that. And so regardless of who's in, which just gets back to the unemployment and Hogan situation, I think we can win. I mean, for instance, on June the 19th, which is Juneteenth, very important date, there's going to be a major demonstration in Annapolis at 2 p.m. Calling for a halt to what the governor's announced, and also demanding that, you know, all the people that have not gotten their benefits get their benefits. But, you know, going back to what you said, the most important thing is that people get organized, because regardless of who's in the administration, we're going to have to be standing up for people's rights. You know, so it's it's probably not as complicated. You know, I don't want to make it out to be that, but hey, Bill.
Fix your camera. Fix your camera. There you come closer.
Yeah. All right. How's that?
He has a real green screen.
Oh, you got a real green screen. You know, you got green screen technology at the bottom of this thing here.
Yeah, but you know what? What happened is that I'm on my cell phone because I couldn't pull you in on my computer for some reason.
Okay,
So-
well, it's not the first time we've been rejected. How are you today?
I'm good, Donnie. And first, let me just say thank you so very much for all you do, man, and for having one of my favorite people on your program. You know, as I always tell CC, you know, I mean, if you look for any organization that's still on more issues and with more organizations, with more people than the People Power Assembly, then you won't find one. So I just want to say, hey, thank you for having Sharon, and thank you, CC, for all you do.
Thank
Well,
you, Bill.
it's not hard to celebrate Sharon, because, as you know, on countless occasions, she's been out there fighting for black people, fighting for all people.
Absolutely.
I see her fighting on the front lines for black people more than I find black leaders who's supposed to be fighting, or at least I think.
Well, man, you know, I don't have no disagreement on that, Donnie. Absolutely, man. I mean, you know, I say the same thing all the time. So I have nothing but much respect and love for Sharon CC.
Well, they're kind words, but actually, I think it's a fight that benefits everybody. And it's a fight that me as a white person really has to, you know, be educating other white folks, because
Well, you gotta educate me about this, because I thought if you are a racist, then if you're a racist, how can you be married to a Korean? I'm not getting that part.
yeah, that's, hey, well,
You have to look at Donald Trump. Look who he married to. He's a racist. I don't think we're going to disagree that he's a racist.
So she's not white?
who, the
Is she white?
Russian woman?
Donald Trump's wife.
Yeah, but you know, I mean, when you talking about pure racism, they try to make sure they marry directly into the pure whiteism of racism of white people. You know, and I'm saying that Donald Trump stepped away from the normal racist behavior and married somebody else. But I'm just saying that, look, you have racist people, so I don't think that, you know, to measure Governor Hogan's racism based upon who he married to is a fair way to measure racism. You know what I'm saying? It's just like the racist giving money to black people and say, well, why would he give money to black people if he's racist?
Bill,
Yes, sir.
you're a black man.
Absolutely.
I don't know where you grew up, but you've been in Baltimore long enough to know that there's certain parts of Baltimore you just got to watch your step. Carroll Park, Back in the day, you couldn't just walk through Hamden running your mouth because one of them white boys would check you and you would be in a fight. Now that's a racist. I don't like you because of the color of your skin. And
Okay.
presumably, if I'm white, then I don't like anybody that's not white. How can you be a racist and you're married to an Asian? I'm just trying to wrap my brain around that.
Well, there's degrees and there's different forms of racism. Let's be honest. And, you know, there's differences in terms of stereotype and different types of racism that people hold for different nationalities. And so, you know, maybe he has I don't know Hogan. Maybe he has less racism and prejudice towards Asian people, but thinks of Black people differently. I mean, it's a big thing. And you can be married to somebody of a different nationality. And, you know, all of us, I'm talking as white folks, have been raised.
I'd have met Uni Hogan. I'd have met Uni Hogan. Let me get this word in. I'd have met her. And if she knew she were married to a racist, I can rest assured she would have sidekicked him into the middle of next week. I know that. And he's got a Black in-law in his family.
Yeah, but you know what? It's based on policy more than what a person does is based more on their actions than necessarily their personal attitudes. I mean, it may, and I'm just saying because I don't know her and I'm not going to take issue with what you said because you know her. And maybe that's true. In other words, maybe
She's
the dinner table, he never uses the N-word. But,
she's a person of integrity, and I think she would literally beat him up if he ever came sideways acting like a racist. But I could be wrong. But
let me just ask one question because I hear where you're going with that, Donnie. I mean, you're making an interesting point. But I guess if we say that, then it's just like a Muslim marrying a Christian, or Jehovah Witness marrying a Baptist person. Even though they're in different religions, they believe different things, don't mean that they don't love each other. So, you know, to try to say, well, because you married to somebody that you don't view as a racist person, then the other person can't be racist. I'm just saying it's not a fair way to measure racism. I think the best way to measure it in terms that looking for what he do for a particular race as opposed to what he do for his own race.
So let me get to this, Bill. Baltimore is 9-1 Democrat, but Black people who vote all Democrat, generally speaking, are the least beneficiaries. We get the least from the Democrats. You look at East Baltimore and West Baltimore, it looks like a bomb went off, but there are parts of Fells Point that Black folks have never gone to. Did you know, Bill, that down around East Harbor, there is a beach? Have you been there?
No, I haven't been to the beach. I haven't been to the beach.
And most Black people don't even know about it. Now, isn't that racist?
Well, it is, Donnie. And again, I think that the point you're making in terms of Democrats being outnumbered 9-1 in this here city, then listen, you know, nobody don't have to tell you because you understand it just like the rest of us. It's not just because you're Democrat that you're going to do what you're supposed to do for the population that you represent. It's a bigger thing that a lot of us don't know that really control the political system here in Baltimore. Right. So we always hoping that when we change leadership, then we're going to change our conditions. But when we see that over and over and over, our conditions don't change, then there's something bigger than what we see. Yeah. And you understand that, Donnie, better than most of us.
So I can call Brandon Scott a racist.
If you want to.
Because his policies have not tended to benefit the Black community from what I see.
Yeah.
One of the first contracts that came through the Board of Estimates was a $42 million contract with no questions raised whatsoever for a white prime. Yet when it comes to issues related to our community, things get tabled, or we'll get to that next week.
Well, can I just inject this because I think what Mr. Gooden says is important. It's the system. I mean, when I spent about 10 years working in New York City, though I've been here like about 40, 50 years, it feels like. And when I got back, the housing crisis, the foreclosure crisis, exploded. And it was one of the biggest bombs against Black wealth, the destruction of people's ability to own homes. And it was the banks that were responsible for it. So I would contend that it doesn't matter who's so much in office, Democrats, Republicans, whatever. But it's rather the system, and until we're organized independently of that to exert our own power, whatever you believe power is. It's just like with the police thing. You know, people talked a lot about defunding. Really, we've been pushing the idea of community control, full community control for a long time, and that's a bigger solution to it. And as far as Brandon Scott, look, I don't know. I can't say that I don't get frustrated behind the scenes that people don't look at his voting record when he was in city council. If you had looked at it carefully, you would have known that he would backtrack on, for instance, the defunding issue, that he would backtrack on a lot of other stuff. Because after all, he was in the bathroom, got locked in the bathroom when they did the $15 minimum wage vote, you know, the first vote, if you recall. So people a lot of times aren't watching all this. But I think it's our job, or at least those of us activists in the community, to try to build people's power from the ground up and keep trying. Because I don't know any other way out of it. I just agree with you. The Democrats aren't any better. I'm not going to defend them.
I mean, we could call Catherine Pugh a racist because that $15 an hour was a reason some people supported her, even though I think the election was stolen.
Right.
But as soon as she got in there,
it was stolen, and I'm not even so sure this most recent one wasn't.
It was stolen too.
Right.
So these aren't even legitimate leaders.
True, but who put them? Who did they serve? Who did they serve? The white power structure, frankly, Don.
Rich white folks, yeah.
Yeah, it's the power structure. Oh, Bill just, I think, got knocked off from his telephone. But
it wasn't me. My hands.
I mean, neither, because I love Bill from my heart. He's been in the streets for a long, long time. But I think it's the power structure. But I think if we're talking about, in other words, I think you're talking about class and power, and racism is a certain kind of ideology against, you know, that's utilized to divide people and do a lot worse than just divide people. That's based on,
I think Joe Biden is a racist.
Pardon?
I think Joe Biden is a racist. He's a carryover.
I don't think you have to think. We know he is. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to know that that's true. But I think you go back to
black people.
I mean, there hasn't been reparations. You go back to that period, and this country was built on slavery and stealing indigenous lands, and that's the basis of it. And we haven't resolved that problem in this country. And until we do, on some level that's much more thoroughgoing than now, well, you know, you have this problem. So I think it's a power structure problem, and I think it's when you say racism, I think the Democrats is more, it's who they serve. They serve the wealthy white folks, and so they're doing it. And I agree with you about the elections in Baltimore City sort of being, if not some stolen, and in some cases not so outright, but you know, a lot of people don't look at, well, what put so-and-so into office? Was it, you look at, you know, I actually look up and see like who actually voted for who. Like, you know, there's the wealthy white sections in Baltimore are always more organized. It's not even poor white people that put, you know, some of these people in, because they're just disorganized. I can tell you truthfully, just disorganized and sometimes all over the place with good and bad ideas and thoughts. But the people that are organized are always the better off. The more middle class, the upper classes, they live in Roland Park. They live in, you know, wherever else that you can think about, you know, Park Heights, you know, Upper Park Heights. You know what I'm saying. In other words, they're the ones that are determining. They're always the ones that, you know.
I've been to a meeting up in Mount Washington discussing the future of Pimlico Racetrack. It was in a private home on a Sunday morning. Mm-hmm. Bill Cole was running Baltimore Development Corporation at the time. There was about 75, 80 white folks in the room. I was one of 3 blacks. And what Bill Cole said officially, he said, since we have the media here, I want it to be known we are not having a meeting about the future of Pimlico. So Bill, while we have you here, did you see President Biden in Tulsa, Oklahoma?
I saw a clip on the news, Donnie. I saw a clip on the news, and you know, first let me just respond to what you said earlier. I too believe that Joe Biden is a racist, and I too believe that, hey, you know, the opportunity he took to go to Tulsa because he was the first president You know, I mean, I don't really think that, you know, we should be so elated
First president to what?
to go to Tulsa
No, he wasn't.
in reference to acknowledge what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Actually, Donald Trump acknowledged Black Wall Street last year during Juneteenth. Is that correct, Sharon Black?
I can't speak to
Yeah,
that.
but he didn't go to Tulsa like Joe Biden did. That's all I'm saying.
He did not. Did Barack Obama go there because he was the first Black president?
No, he didn't.
Is that racist?
Well, yes, we could say it's racist, but that's what I'm saying. It's different categories of racism, Donnie. You know, I mean, listen, we're not gonna say that we don't have Black people that's not racist, right? I mean, I would never dare say that, right? But you know, but when we measure racism, then we ain't gonna look at white racism the same way we look at Black racism. And why? You know what I'm saying? Because we're talking about Black and white, right? So when we look at the power structure, then we can have Black people in positions that's going to do the same thing that our ultimate white racists would do in terms of policy and making decisions, right? But I think it comes back to what Sharon said. I keep saying this, Donnie. You know better than all people. I mean, a lot of people, you've been out there for a long time, right? Until people organize around issues to have power, then you cannot change policy and make people in positions do what the average citizen need to get done, because the average politician do not cater for the average citizen, Black nor white.
So why do we keep playing this political game? It's not working.
Because a lot of us don't know no better, and a lot of us wants to believe that if we change leadership, that eventually it's going to change. But I think that we have a history to know that, you know, we have changed leadership over and over. And even when we talk about, you hear people a lot of times in different programs saying, well, 20 years ago, politicians was better and we did better. Well, why do we keep getting worse if we know what to do? You know what I'm saying? So it's something intricately wrong with the system that we have to dismantle this system to be able to start over to create a better system.
Well, I will tell you, and not ignoring you, Sharon, but Bill, I think the big problem in our community, the Black community, is classism. You got Black people with a little degree, a little bit of money, and then all of a sudden they want nothing to do with the old neighborhood. Or they move to the county and don't want anything to do with Baltimore. The problem in Baltimore is classism. We got more Black elected officials than most any city in America. And it has translated into nothing. We have not seen a brand new recreation center in my lifetime. Prince George's County, DC, they got brand new recs. They got outdoor lights. Baltimore do a lot of talking, but no delivery.
Well, I'm not getting ready to debate you on that, Donnie, because we certainly could talk about classism. The only thing I'm saying to you is this, and you know, again, I keep saying you know better than a lot of other people, just like Sharon Cece know better. Until we the people get organized to change it, then our conditions don't change. I mean, I wish I could just go to sleep tonight and wake up tomorrow and leadership would do the right thing. That's not going to happen. You know, we have to have a people movement, and we have to have people to get organized on the ground to be able to have power to force change, because that's how our change is going to come. Just like this, Don. Let me just make this last point, because I said this to people the other day. You look at all these bike lanes they putting up in Baltimore City, right? Do you see Black people riding bicycles? Now, why are you taking all these lanes out the street, creating bicycle lanes? What's the purpose for that? The purpose is for what's to come in terms of what leadership is expecting to come, right? But we just sit here as a community and we watch it like we don't even really know what they're doing. Hell, we're not riding no bicycles.
And a lot of white people,
I agree with that.
You got kids, you got grandkids, you ain't putting your kids on no damn bike. So it's really an insult to the decent white folks in this city, because when that fire truck is trying to get down Maryland Avenue, St. Paul Street, they're not looking at race. I got nothing but love for the firefighters. They go and help anybody. Right. But you got these old dumb bike lanes hemming up traffic, making lanes narrow, and legislation is pushed. Let me ask you, does Ryan Dorsey have any children?
Good question. I don't think so.
I don't know.
He ain't got no damn kids. If he had kids, he wouldn't be pushing this dumb legislation. but I blame the blacks on the city council for not saying anything. Sharon, let me get to you.
I kind of agree with you about the bike lane thing. Totally. It's sort of, I want to, it's sort of like a gentrification thing. They figure they can attract white middle class people if they can claim they have bike lanes like San Francisco or something like that. But I contend, fine, you have to provide for people's needs, education and healthcare, and the rate of people being murdered in our city, and none of that's being resolved. And we're talking about bike lanes. I had to put my 2 cents in. I occasionally write it on Facebook, and I tell you, a million people want to dump on you as soon as you say anything. I think it was Marsha Reeves. I forget who said something. I agreed with her. And I swear to God, everybody came out of the woodwork who wanted to, kick our butts. And, I don't know. It's just amazing.
And so you know what? That is cyberbullying. We always talking about what the kids need to do. When Marsha put it out there on Facebook, Bill, that the bike lanes were a goddamn joke, all of these people had something to say. But the thing is, were they regular, everyday people, or are they people that live in the outskirts?
Some of them, right, don't even live in the city, and they have a lot of veiled racism when they say these things. And as soon as you say anything against them, it's so funny. I don't even debate people because you can't. But I remember when she raised that, and I'm like, okay, why isn't there any real democracy? And you know that the pandemic has been used by these politicians. They love it. They love having virtual meetings, because at least we had hearings at the War Memorial, hearings in City Hall around some of these issues, so that the community could have weighed in on this. And so those who have money, those who own, I don't mean the smaller businesses. I mean the bigger, smaller businesses, Ryan Dorsey, others like that, they're able to prevail because it's very hard to oppose them. But I totally agree with Bill, but I guess me and Bill agree about a lot of stuff. I look at the whole issue as it's really a systemic problem, and it's really about, Baltimore's sort of never been like Detroit, and I have very close friends in Detroit, in that it sort of has stayed a sort of a plantation city, where the people, even though it may have changed in terms of, you're right, there are Black representatives in Baltimore City, but it's really just between, a class thing, as you were saying, Mr. Glover, now. And so that, it's sort of those who got the better jobs in the inside, and those who are still stuck on the outside, which is the majority of the community.
You got a problem with Hogan. I got a problem with Black people in position who don't know that slavery is over. But let me just say this, Sharon Black, we love you.
Well, I love you too.
No. We really love you. You remind me of the spirit of John Brown. He's mentioned in my book.
Oh, wow.
I'm a big fan of Captain John Brown. He put his money where his mouth is. We got a lot of Black people who didn't have that kind of heart. You want to say something, Bill?
Well, I just want to say what you said about Sharon Cece. I told Sharon Cece this before. I told Sharon Cece she's my favorite white person in the world.
Bill embarrasses me everywhere I go. Because I actually think it's out of my own self-interest. I mean, I could talk about my own upbringing, and as a person who was poor and whose family is from coal mining region, and the things that I was taught as a kid. But in reality, for poor white folks, they better get wise, because their enemy is not other Black people, and fighting racism helps everyone. So that's where I'm coming.
Sharon, I gotta ask you, there's a new drug that's making its way to Baltimore called crystal meth.
And that's usually been what they call, the hillbilly. It's out in the county.
Well, it's coming to the city, and it's like crack on steroids.
Right.
What are we gonna do?
Gotta fight it. It's a big, what you're raising. It's a big issue, because any time drugs flood the community, everybody saw what the crack epidemic did. And we're talking back, when
80s
in Harbor Lee, and a lot of them were fighting it out in the West Coast, and the communities were, like flooded. And I remember my son was a teenager, and I used to worry about him coming home, because there were so many murders in the street. Now that's the same now, but a lot of it was behind the flooding of the communities with the crack cocaine. So these are always big worries. I don't, you know, it's a complicated situation because I know a lot of people call for more police. But you know what? We've been having more police for the last several decades, and we still have the same problem with drugs in the community. And I know this isn't something people want to hear, but I think what Bill was saying is part of the solution. And I know this is coming out of the 60s. Black Panther Party was active when, you know, the King's movement was strong, Malcolm X, all that. It gave people hope. It gave people hope. And having hope and being involved in a struggle, whether it's for liberation, justice, what have you be, even for the unemployment rights, is, I think, one of the greatest alleviators of people killing themselves, you know, whether it's through drugs or fighting over drug territory or killing each other out of despair. But, you know, I don't have a solution to that right now. And that's something sad to say. I mean, we've all say, okay, well, we need more jobs. We need the city. You know, you go through the city, you're right. It looks like a bombed out, you know, third world country. I mean, kids growing up in that kind of atmosphere can have hope and confidence in themselves. And then you got a government that's killing other people overseas. I mean, that's hypocritical to then tell kids not to be violent or kids not to use drugs when the system itself is so corrupt. So I wish there was an easier solution. I certainly laud what some of the community movements are doing in the streets. What Bill is doing with unifying Black men, what other groups in the Black community are doing. Obviously, as a white person, I can't, you know, go into to tell the youth what to do. That's ridiculous. But I can just give you my honest opinion.
That's why we love you so much, because you understand just giving respect. Come on, Bill. I see it coming out your mouth. Burn all the drugs. Come on, Bill.
You raised the question down in reference to the drugs that's getting ready to come this way. And the interesting thing is that these people do studies on everything, right? They can tell you that by the time a child is in the 5th grade, if they're gonna be going to prison or not, right? I just don't see how you can have them kind of studies, but then you can't have studies in terms of how we're gonna stop this drug epidemic that we up against. And again, you know, I mean,
Bill, let's not be naive. There are people that get paid off the drug trade. People in government,
true. Thanks.
People in other countries, banks. Ed Fox, Chief Ed Fox, did a trace on the pipeline on the money trail. It goes all the way to Wall Street. So, Bill, let's be fair. It's across the board, including the White House. Vietnam, 15 years in Vietnam, that was over dope, wasn't it? We in Afghanistan.
Absolutely, and that's what I'm saying, Donnie. So I'm saying, so when we say what we're gonna do about it, then I'm saying that the only thing that could be done about it is what we the people do, because the government officials and the leadership in this country is not going to stop the drugs nor the weapons from coming in this country now when it's $1 billion industry.
So
that's a big
I did
problem.
not say that crystal meth. I did not say crystal meth is new. However, it is big time on the West Coast. Would you agree, Sharon?
Yeah, and I think that different drugs do stream in at different times. I mean, I hear from young people that I do listen to that, you know, basically you can't even find heroin out there right now. It's all
that's why we have.
What's the name of the drug? I'm so naive about this stuff, but it changes.
The Molly's, fentanyl.
Fentanyl is what I was referring to.
Oh, yeah.
I should know as a nurse. Fentanyl is now the thing that's actually.
Well, let me tell you, Sharon, we now have white addicts in Sandtown, in the alleys, in the vacants, squatting everywhere, particularly since Freddie Gray. With the consent decree, the police have a hands-off, take a knee, Kaepernick approach.
I believe you. I mean, it's also, it's not, you know, it's the despair that people have right now. I mean, and that's why it's also like people made a big to do. Okay, you know, it's no one cared when it was happening in the Black community, and now people.
Oh yeah, we were dope fiends junkies. Yeah, dope fiends were junkies, but now, it's an opioid epidemic. That's a mental illness.
Right, but the thing is that part of it is that it's becoming more widespread because of, you know, go out to Western Maryland. I was out there for, I forget what reason. And it's just amazing how much things have changed, because some towns and cities, like in Western Maine, there's no employment at all unless you're a guard now.
Yeah.
And so the desperation amongst the white population there, who may not be guards because they can't be, everybody can't be a guard. It's like that whole thing we were talking about unemployment.
There's a spiritual lesson in this, Sharon, that we have to learn. Back during, you remember that movie, The Godfather? What did they say? Where did they say put the dope? You saw the movie, Bill. Where did they say put the dope?
They said put it right where it's at in the black communities.
Okay, but here's the thing, and this is where we need spiritual leadership. If I have poison in my hand and I'm seeking to bring it to you, Sharon, invariably, it's going to spill on me.
Absolutely.
When you go carrying poison and hate, invariably, it's going to get on you. I know drug dealers, 60 years old. They sold all the dope in town. And I can guarantee you they lost one or two, if not more, children to the dope epidemic.
Absolutely true. That's always the way it's, in all sorts of wars, it's what they call blowback. It's always going to happen. You're right.
And let me just spin this another different way, Donnie. First, let me just say before we get off, thank you for the programs that you produce, man, and that you put on, because it's so important that people hear the issues that you discuss. But even when we talk about the drug epidemic, right? I'm damn near 70 years old. The public education system today look worse than what it did when I went to school. I mean, that's a disgrace. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's an attack upon us that is a directly attack that is no reason in the world why the school system should be worse today than it was 70 years ago, right? But we're not dealing with them type of situations, right? And so again, it comes back to like, until we the people rise up and organize in mass numbers, this system will continue to crumble and not change for the benefit of the masses of poor people and black people.
Well, I don't see it changing no time soon. And you got black people partially responsible for it, because you got blacks in all of these positions, and it's classism. It's that I got mine and you got yours to get mentality. I don't even blame white folks. We're doing it to ourselves, Bill.
Well, that's what I'm saying, Donnie. But when you say you don't see a change, and I'm saying that, look, we have to do two things, right? We always have to have hope, right? And, the hope is the fact that what's going to keep us trying to change it. We have to have solutions that it can change. I mean, our mistake or our unfortunate thing is that we cannot get the masses of people to rise up in numbers how they need to rise up to create change, because we can't change things, right? And we should never get to a point that we say that it's not going to change, or we think it's not going to change, because once we do that, we encourage other people to not become active and to stay on the sideline opposed to getting into the fight.
But Bill, that's a basic thing we got to understand. Black people are more loyal to the Democratic Party than their own damn church.
Well, we're not disagreeing on that, Don. I think the political parties have to do better, just like the spiritual parties have to do better.
No, they're not going to do better. Frederick Douglass said, "Power concedes nothing without a demand." We don't know how to demand change, and that's why, despite you calling Hogan a racist, we need a Republican in there from time to time to make the Democrats act right. Sharon Black, there was a hip-hop song that said, "If your girl start acting up, then you take her friend." The Democratic Party treats black people like a side piece. There's no respect for black people except at election time. We've not had a black governor, a U.S. senator. When Kwesi ran for Senate, Mike Miller, Martin O'Malley laughed at him. But my people, black people, are expected to vote for Democrats. And when our candidate doesn't win and they give us a Brandon Scott, because I don't remember him leading any poll, he just all of a sudden he's the mayor. Armstead Jones, the Republican, said nothing.
No, but let me be clear, Donnie. My attack is not on Hogan. My attack is on this political system. And I said before, I don't care if Baltimore was full of Republicans opposed to Democrats. I'm saying basically, I still think we'd be in the same shape. I'm just simply saying until people get involved in mass numbers to organize around issues, then we will not change the conditions that we living in, because it's obvious that the ruling class and the upper class do not have compassion to pull the lower class of people up or to change the conditions in terms of the impoverished neighborhoods. We have to change them conditions, and the only way we can change them is to get active and be unified, to have the power that you just said in terms of what Frederick Douglass said. Right? Power concedes nothing but power. So poor people, where's our power? We don't have money. It have to be in numbers.
Right. And I think we're all saying basically the same thing. It's just maybe, and I understand where you're coming from, Mr. Glover. I mean, at times it gets frustrating, and at times, you wonder what people are thinking. I certainly do. But on the other hand, if we don't do something, we know that people will never rise up and do the things that Bill is talking about. So we keep going. We keep going. And then, the old adage about the straw that broke the camel's back, we don't know. I mean, Hogan, this started off because I did call Hogan a racist. That doesn't mean that the Democratic Party isn't. We'd be fighting whoever was in that.
Oh, Marianne Lasante made her comments very plain. Harford County, she called Prince George's County the trigger district with an N. She called it the N-word district. Marianne Lasante, delegate, Harford County. She said it.
Yeah. I remember. Right.
And they never did nothing about it. Nothing.
Right. Which is ridiculous. There's so many incredible things that don't happen in Maryland. I mean, look, I share your thing in terms of I look at other places in the country where things are happening and I go like Baltimore, oh my God. But
let me say this, the Democrats down in Montgomery County, they don't identify with blacks and Democrats in Baltimore City in no way, shape, or form. Yet we got O'Malley from Montgomery County. Is Hogan from down in Montgomery County or he's from Prince George's County? Brooke Learman, her people are from Montgomery County. Francho is from Montgomery County. Montgomery County white folks have never demonstrated in Baltimore City, ever. They are as Republican as it gets.
Oh, I agree.
Who do you like for governor, Sharon?
Say what? Who do I like for governor? I don't know of anybody that's running. I read the recent article in the Sun papers, but I don't have any choice.
Who you like, Bill?
Well, I don't know, Donnie. Right now, I'm leaning towards Westmore, but so I mean, I just have to, see who are going to be in the race and hear people's what they proposing. But right now, I would say Westmore if I had to say today.
Well, has anybody seen the last Democrat to run for governor? Because I haven't seen him since then.
I have not, neither.
Ben Jealous. You haven't seen Ben Jealous?
I haven't heard from him neither. Not saw him, nor I haven't heard from him. But let me say this in terms of closing, Donnie. First, thank you so much for having this opportunity. But I just want closing one thing, because it's important for people to always know that people can't have power if people rise up. When we talk about George Floyd, as unfortunate as it was, we know the only reason Derek Chauvin is convicted and in jail right now is because you have millions and millions and millions of people to rise up.
No. Hold
on. Yes, it is. Even in terms of the camera footage, if we would have had the camera footage, but the people hadn't rose up, then we still wouldn't have got no eviction. So you can't take that victory away from the people, man. The camera is what helped the people to rise up, but it's the millions of people that you had all around the world standing up that forced the issue to happen the way it did. I'm with you with the camera.
I have to agree with Bill. Sorry, I really do, because there's a lot of camera footage, and sometimes I get so shocked. There's this camera footage that clearly points out it was a murder, and yet nothing happens. So
if there were no footage, nobody would have felt the pain of George Floyd.
True. That was like the spark. But if people hadn't responded to the spark, nothing would have happened.
Exactly.
Fair enough.
It's the
I think
response.
we all really agree. I mean,
Right.
I mean, nobody wants to be an apologist
And
for
kudos to the young lady who had the heart to videotape it.
Mhm.
And to all of them who had to watch it, knowing that they probably wanted to run up on the police and bust them upside the head. That
Right.
was just, when are we going to address racism?
Right. Well, I'm going to just say one thing too, because I know that you probably want to close out soon, but you can't see it, but in the background is a picture of Perrin Mitchell, and it's from way back when he came out against the Iraq War. The reason why I'm raising Perrin Mitchell's name is it was recently the anniversary of his death, I believe, or his birth, and that was an incredibly different period. But politicians like Perrin Mitchell stood on the backs of the movement at that time, which underscores what Bill has been saying, is that it's the movement that, both builds up leadership and leadership helps to build up the movement. And we haven't had that kind of political leadership around for a long time. But the movement's also been, kind of decimated. I just have absolute hope. Maybe it's because I'm getting older and I think I'm going to see change before I die. But I remember people in the 60s thought the change was coming then, and I actually didn't think it was around the corner. And now I believe that even though it's difficult, and even though it doesn't appear on the surface, I mean, this past summer, I agree with Bill, for all of its shortcomings, problems, what have you, there was so many. The New York Times basically had a whole article which they felt necessary to document the number of demonstrations that occurred around the world and around the country. And it was in the millions. And so it's a movement. You don't always see people come out, except for, like you said, Mr. Glover, when there's a spark that a horrific murder is shown on video. But they didn't need to have to come out either. They might not have come out. So I have hope. I have a lot of hope. I have hope for Baltimore. I'm frankly poor, and I'm not going to be able to move out of the city anytime soon.
Rich. You are rich.
Well, I'm rich in the people that I love and respect, like Bill, yourself, and all the people in my own neighborhood right here on this block. And for that, I'm blessed. And so, it doesn't matter. But I do think that we may see change in Baltimore too. But it may not come from the ballot box. It may not be one of these politicians. I don't really know. But the movement will produce better people.
One thing in closing, Donnie Glover. Then and again, this is about this hope piece. Why do you continue to do what you continue to do if we don't have hope?
Thank you, Bill.
And that'll be the
He's not pretending to. He's pretending to be a cynic, but he isn't. We know that.
I know Donnie. I've been knowing Donnie Glover a long time.
Yeah, I got people around me
Sharon Black.
I have people like that around me too, saying like, "I can't believe these people. What's happening? Why aren't they doing anything?" This is just, And I get it. I feel it. But I agree with Bill.
Sharon, how can people support you? How can they get in touch with you?
Well, the only thing that I want to say is that we are having a demonstration on Saturday, June 19th, on Juneteenth in Annapolis. People can text us or call us at 410-218-4835. That's 410-218-4835. Just text us. If you have a grievance, every Thursday, there's an unemployed workers' rights clinic at 2011 North Charles Street. We have pro bono lawyers there, and representatives will take grievances. And that's right near 20th and North Avenue, 2011 North Charles Street, Baltimore, Maryland, 21218. Thank you, Donnie, for giving us this opportunity, rather, to even get the information out.
Well, I want to thank CC for introducing me to you years. CD introducing me
to
years ago. And I'd also like to publicly thank your son for sharing you with us.
Oh, my son. Well, that's great. And I just want to let you know, Bill calls me CC because that is my old name when I was married. CC. And and then what happened is that my son's father passed away, but he was remarried, and I went back to using my maiden name. My real name is Sharon Black. But it's so out of deference to his.
Well, I always wanted to ask you, how did you get a last name Black?
I don't. That's my father. He was Welsh and Scottish, and that's a common name, in Scotland. And so that's my name. It's, a lot of people poke fun at it. It's fine. I laugh along with everybody's jokes, but it's my real name. It's actually the name that I was born with. But like I said, then I married a person named Cece, who was Italian. And like I said, he passed away. He was a longshoreman here, but he also was remarried. And I was friends with his second wife. And when she married him, I said, I'm not, deference to her, she can use his name and I'll go back to my maiden name. So poor Bill, he still calls me Cece because that's what I was with the.
He's stuck in a time warp. Come on, Bill.
No. It is okay because what they say, I go by any name people want to call me. Just call me for dinner. You know that old saying, I don't care what you call me. Just call me for dinner. I don't.
Now, Don, the only thing I want to say in closing, I want to thank you. I want to thank CC. I want to thank all the people that's standing up and trying to be activists, right? And trying to be active. Because again, I'm putting the burden of change upon the people, right? I'm not looking for the political leadership to change the conditions of the people without the people standing up to change the conditions to force the political leadership to do some of the right things. So thank you, Donnie Glover, for all you do and what you continue to do in giving us a voice when we have this opportunity to have this voice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Have a beautiful day. We'll be back at 7 p.m. with an interview with the one and only Dr. Tyrone Taborn. My name's Donnie Glover, and have a beautiful day. We love you, Sharon Black. Thank you for all that you do. We mean it. True soldier, certified.
Thank you.